Hello and welcome to True Crime ESL, True Crime Stories for English Learners. I'm your host, Nova Singh. In the video description, there's a link to a free document with vocabulary descriptions and a transcript for this episode that you can download. Can you find the 2 special phrases from the document in today's story? Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy this podcast and want to hear more. Today, our story is about Ted Bundy. Theodore Robert Bundy, known as Ted, was born in 1946 in Vermont, USA. His mother wasn't married to his father, which was seen as shameful at the time. When he was young, he thought that his grandparents were his parents and that his mother was his older sister. Nobody knows who Ted Bundy's father really was. As a child, Ted didn't have many friends and was bullied at school. He didn't like his stepfather, Johnny Bundy, and looked down on him for not being well educated. Ted Bundy did well in school, but wasn't one of the top students. He was quite good at sport, but not good enough to be on the school teams. He wasn't a popular student, but he was learning how to behave like one. As he grew older, Bundy began showing some signs of the killer he was going to become. He bought mice to dissect them in the woods. He made traps in the ground that other children fell into. He stole things and lied about his actions. He started looking into people's windows and became what's known as a peeping Tom. Bundy graduated from university in 1972 with a degree in psychology. He then started studying for a law degree, but never finished the course. During his time at university, he was in a relationship with a woman called Diane Edwards. When she ended their relationship, Bundy was heartbroken, and some people think that many of his future victims were chosen because they looked like Diane. Ted Bundy's first confirmed victim was Linda Ann Healy, who was murdered in February 1974. Bundy abducted her from her bedroom, which was in the basement of a house. She was 21 years old. A further 10 women were confirmed to be victims of Bundy during 1974. They were all kidnapped, sexually assaulted, and strangled or bludgeoned to death. The bodies of 19-year-old student Donna Gail Manson and 17-year-old Deborah Jean Kent have never been found. There were witnesses to some of these crimes. 2 women were kidnapped from Washington's Lake Sammamish in July 1974. People saw a good-looking man who called himself Ted asking girls to help him with his boat. One of his arms was in a sling, so some girls felt sorry for him and went to his car, which was described as a tan or brown-coloured Volkswagen Beetle. Not every girl believed Ted Bundy, and a few said they wouldn't help him, or ran away when they saw there was no boat with his car. Unfortunately, 23-year-old Janice Ann Ott got in his car, and some hours later, so did 19-year-old Denise Marie Nasland. Both were murdered, and their bodies were found near a state park 2 months later, with another victim of Bundy's, 18-year-old Georgianne Hawkins. Another witness was Carol Duronch, whom Bundy tried to kidnap in November 1974. He used a police officer uniform as a disguise and pretended he was driving her to a police station, but she escaped from his car after he tried to attack her. He went on to murder Deborah Jean Kent that same night. Bundy is confirmed to have killed 5 women and girls in 1975, including 12-year-old Lynette Dawn Culver. Only one of their bodies has ever been found, that of Karen Eileen Campbell. In November 1975, he was arrested for kidnapping Carol DeRonch. He was sentenced to a maximum of 15 years in prison in February 1976. Later that year, he was charged with Karen Campbell's murder and pleaded not guilty. In June 1977, Bundy worked as his own defense lawyer in the Campbell murder trial. This meant he didn't have to wear handcuffs and was allowed to use the courthouse library to do research for his case. He jumped out of the window to escape and was on the run for 5 days before being caught again. In December 1977, Bundy escaped once more by climbing through the ceiling of his cell. He travelled to Florida, and in January 1978, he started killing again. In one of his most well-known attacks, Bundy broke into a house for female students of Florida State University. He killed 2 students in their beds and seriously injured 2 more. He then attacked another student in a nearby apartment building, leaving her with lifelong injuries. The next month, Bundy kidnapped and murdered 12-year-old Kimberly Leach, who was his last confirmed victim. A few days after this murder, Bundy stole a car and was arrested for driving dangerously. He gave a false name at first, but then admitted who he was. In July 1978, Bundy was charged with the murders of the 2 university students, Lisa Levy and Margaret Bowman. He wanted to be in charge of his own defense again, and because he was good-looking and could be quite charming, he got a lot of attention from newspapers and the media. Bundy was eventually found guilty of 3 murders and 3 attempted murders and was sentenced to death by the electric chair. During the time he was on death row, Bundy married a woman named Carol Boone, who he had been dating since 1974. They had a daughter in 1981. Bundy also gave many hours of interviews to people, including investigators from the FBI Behavioral Analysis Unit. This gave some important information to investigators about how serial killers think, although not every killer fits neatly into a profile. Bundy was given a test to measure levels of psychopathy and scored 39 out of 40. Bundy also said he could help police search for another serial murderer known as the Green River Killer. The Green River Killer was eventually caught, but it wasn't until 12 years after Bundy's death. Some people thought the information he provided was actually about things that he himself had done. Ted Bundy was killed by electrocution in January 1989 at the age of 42. While he confessed to having murdered 30 women and girls, investigators think the real number of victims could be much higher and that he might have killed over 100 women. It seems likely that he started killing or attacking women earlier than 1974, but we'll never know for sure. As well as abducting, assaulting, and murdering his victims, Bundy also confessed to having sex with some of their bodies and cutting the heads off at least 12 women. People are still fascinated by what goes on in the mind of a psychopath, and Bundy has been played many times in films and on TV shows, and is the subject of numerous books and documentaries. An examination of his brain after his death didn't show any signs of damage or abnormalities which might help to explain his behaviour. The judge for one of his murder trials called Bundy's crimes heinous, atrocious, and cruel, and that they were extremely wicked, shockingly evil, vile. Bundy was one of America's worst, most violent serial murderers, but he escaped police attention at first because he was educated, dressed smartly, and could hide his true personality. Friends and work colleagues had no idea that the man they knew was really a monster. So that's all for today. Thanks for listening to True Crime ESL. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this podcast, and maybe tell a friend about it. You can follow us on Instagram at True Crime ESL, and you can also support us by donating at buymeacoffee.com/True Crime ESL if you want us to keep making these podcasts. Today's story was written by Katy Watson, and all other production was by me, Nova Singh. We'll be back in the new year. Thanks for listening. You can download our free document for vocabulary, a transcript of today's story, and our story sources. You can find the link to the document in the video description. Take care and stay safe out there, true crime fans.